And I'm going to caveat this with, I know you're not in the government, and I know that's an easy way not to answer the question and a perfectly fair way to not answer the question. So I'm actually trying to get to how you would approach this problem, because you would be within your rights to say, well, I don't know yet, but I want you to try to answer this. The department, and I have a good relationship with the secretary, the department froze around 3,200 grant awards for review. And, I've spoken with him both publicly and privately of the problem of all of them being frozen and then the bandwidth problem of unfreezing them individually. And he was pretty frank about the inability to process this in a timely fashion. I think we're now, out of the 3,200, somewhere between 400 and 500 that have now been approved. But this is the law, and we're now talking about billions of dollars of transportation infrastructure, nonpartisan stuff, bipartisan stuff, kind of, meat and potato stuff. I'm wondering how, in the interest of fidelity to the law that we passed, both the appropriations law and the IIJA, how do we effectuate a process that doesn't end up taking us 5 years to get money out that's been approved, a couple of years ago now?
Well, thank you very much, Senator. Manpower is, a great way to solve a lot of problems. So ensuring that you have eyeballs on the grants. I will tell you from my own experience, President Trump had ordered a review of all spending in order to ensure that the taxpayer dollars are being used faithfully. At the Department of the Interior, we go through each individual grant and review and see, because the government is very good at putting in clauses for allowing it to do things like pause its spending. And so to the extent there is a justifiable reason for doing so, then we've put a pause on it. If there's not, then the money goes out the door. So I completely sympathize with what you're saying, and I'm familiar with the challenge.
I just want to offer that just operationally, we may have to invert the assumption, right? You may want to review for impropriety or, noncompliance with the law or some other reason to freeze. But I think that as long as the Department of Transportation professionals have worked with a State Department of Transportation to engage, that our assumption should be that that is lawful, subject to review, not that all of it doesn't go until it's individually sort of reapproved. And because if we do that, and again, I'm not trying to, reduce the prerogatives of the department to align better with the new president's priorities and the new secretary's priorities, but you're just not going to get through this list, and you're going to get people on a bipartisan basis, pretty angry. The other challenge is, I don't want to create a situation where it's Tammany Hall, and I got to appeal directly to the secretary to kind of release my funds, right? And then it's a mayor and a swimming pool in your council district, and that's not the way that we do transportation infrastructure. So this is not working right now, and I think the secretary would agree, but we need a new process, because more manpower, what's going to happen. It's going to take months to just fund, hire, train, and then we're into next year, and we will be 1/3 of our way through the list. This thing is going too slow. There is an Office of Tribal Transportation and an Office of Tribal Government Affairs, and I want to know how you're going to work with them to train lawyers and program staff on their obligations under the law regarding tribal consultation and transportation issues. The reason I mention this is that we did a bunch of things on a bipartisan basis to include tribes in ways that are novel, but they are now statutory. The problem is that, as you know, from DOI, people kind of know what tribal consultation means. DOT, not as much. And, we had a problem with the Energy Department where this was all new to them. So they had like bonding requirements for like a 300-person tribe, as if that tribe were a municipal government that could go onto Wall Street and get a AAA rating. And so I just want your commitment to kind of work through these issues, given your experience at DOI, and to help your team understand that tribes can't be treated like counties. You have to understand the unique legal obligations and trust obligations between the United States government and tribes.
Yeah, absolutely, Senator. Thank you, and I hope I can help create value in that respect.
Okay, thank you. And then final question, with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. We, in the last FAA reauthorization, I passed a law to create a standalone aviation consumer protection office to further empower this function at DOT. It's not fully established because it was subject to appropriations, and we haven't appropriated money for this purpose. So that functions would reside under the GC's shop, and I just want your commitment to just fight for consumers in the aviation context, and for us to be able to work together on a couple of specific things. There were some rulemakings that I think were broadly popular and rational, and I'm hoping we can work together on just protecting aviation consumers.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Brian Schatz, Democrat Hawaii, raised concerns regarding the delays in the processing of federal transportation grants during a recent discussion with Gregory Zerzan, the nominee for General Counsel of the Department of Transportation. Senator Schatz pointed out that approximately 3,200 transportation infrastructure grants had been frozen for review, leading to a significant backlog in funding approval. While some grants had been approved, he expressed frustration with the slow pace of the process, which was further exacerbated by the inability to process grants individually in a timely manner. The senator emphasized the need for a new approach to expedite the release of funds that had already been approved in previous years, stressing that billions of dollars were at stake in bipartisan, nonpartisan transportation projects. He proposed that more manpower be allocated to the task of reviewing the grants, noting that if the department continued to process grants as slowly as it had been, it would take years to get the funds distributed. This, he argued, would lead to frustration from both political parties and negatively impact the transportation infrastructure the grants were meant to support. Senator Schatz also highlighted that the Department of Transportation needed to reassess its process for freezing and unfreezing funds. He suggested that, instead of assuming that all grants should be frozen until individually reproved, the department should work under the assumption that the grants are lawful unless there is a clear reason to pause them for review. The senator acknowledged that such an approach would require adjustments to the department's operational procedures, but argued that it would be more efficient in the long run. Another key point raised by Senator Schatz was the involvement of tribal governments in transportation projects. He pointed out the importance of proper tribal consultation, noting that new statutory requirements had been put in place to ensure tribes were treated equitably in these projects. He expressed concern that the Department of Transportation might not fully understand the legal complexities surrounding tribal consultation, a problem that had been seen with other federal agencies in the past. Senator Schatz asked for Mr. Zerzan's commitment to working closely with the department to ensure that tribal governments were treated with the appropriate level of respect and that legal obligations were met. Lastly, the senator turned his attention to aviation consumer protection. He mentioned a recent law that created a standalone office for aviation consumer protection within the Department of Transportation. Although the office had not yet been fully established due to a lack of funding, Senator Schatz asked Mr. Zerzan for his commitment to advocate for consumers in the aviation industry. He specifically referenced upcoming rulemakings that had gained broad support and hoped that, together, they could work to protect aviation consumers from unfair practices. Throughout the conversation, Senator Schatz emphasized the need for faster, more efficient processes in federal grant management and for greater attention to the unique needs of tribal governments. He concluded by seeking Mr. Zerzan's commitment to addressing these issues and ensuring that the Department of Transportation could effectively meet its responsibilities.